I took the job because I needed $8,000 by March and nobody else was hiring in February. The ad said overnight custodian, highway rest stop, Interstate 41 northbound, mile marker 287. 60 miles past anything resembling a town. The pay was twice minimum wage plus hazard differential for winter conditions, and they'd take anyone with a clean driving record and no warrants. I had both, plus a car that still ran and student loans that didn't care about weather. The woman on the phone asked 3 questions. Could I follow written instructions exactly? Did I have problems with isolation? Was I available to start immediately? I said yes 3 times. She told me to arrive February 4th before 1800 hours. Use the service entrance on the west side and ask for Vernon. She repeated the date and time twice, then hung up before I could ask about benefits. I left Milwaukee at noon with a thermos of coffee and a duffel bag. The sky was the color of old concrete. The highway stretched north through flat farmland that turned gradually into pine forest, the trees getting denser and darker as the mile markers climbed. Snow covered everything past marker 250. Not fresh snow, but the kind that had been there since December, compressed into gray-white layers that made the roadside look lunar. The rest stop appeared at 1743 according to my dashboard clock. A single-story brick building set back from the highway, surrounded by a parking lot big enough for 30 vehicles. There were 2 cars in the lot, both near the main entrance. The building had large windows across the front and no windows at all on the sides or back. Overhead lights were just coming on in the parking lot, harsh sodium yellow against the darkening sky. I pulled around to the west side like she'd said. The service entrance was a gray metal door with no handle on the outside, just a buzzer and an intercom panel. I pressed the buzzer and waited. 40 seconds passed. I pressed it again. The intercom crackled. Name. I'm here for the custodian position I called 2 days ago. Name. Sarah Collins. The door clicked and swung inward. I caught it and stepped into a concrete hallway lit by fluorescent tubes. The door closed behind me with a pneumatic hiss, and a heavy lock engaged automatically. Vernon was waiting 10 feet down the hall, 60-something gray hair buzzed military short, wearing a maintenance uniform with a name patch and a radio clipped to his belt. He looked at me for 3 seconds without speaking. You drove up from Milwaukee? Yes, sir. Roads were clear? Some ice past marker 260. He nodded once. Follow me. We don't have much time. The hallway branched twice. Vernon walked fast and didn't look back. We passed a storage room, a mechanical room with a furnace that sounded like it was working hard, and a small office with a desk and a filing cabinet. He stopped at a door marked custodial and pushed it open. Inside was a locker room. 6 lockers, a wooden bench, a sink, a mirror. A mop bucket and cleaning cart were parked in the corner. Vernon opened the second locker from the left and pulled out a key ring with 12 keys on it. This is your locker. Combination is your hire date, February 4th, 0204. Don't write it down. He set the key ring on the bench and pulled out a spiral-bound notebook with a blue cover, then a radio identical to the one on his belt, then a flashlight, a measuring tape, and a small digital watch with a black rubber strap. Notebook stays with you at all times. Radio stays on channel 6. Flashlight gets fresh batteries every shift. Batteries are in the top drawer of the custodial cart. Watch must be synchronized exactly with the clock in the main lobby. There's a master clock above the entrance. Verify your watch against it at the start of every shift. I nodded. Vernon was speaking in the tone of someone who'd given this speech before and expected it to be followed. Your shift is 2200 hours to 0600 hours, 7 days a week for the first month. After that, we'll discuss rotation. You get one 30-minute break taken between 0130 and 0200 hours, not before, not after. You take it in this room with the door closed. You do not leave the building during your shift for any reason. Understood? Yes, sir. He picked up the notebook and opened it. The pages were blank except for the first one, which had a list written in blue ink. He held it so I could see. These are the rules. You follow them exactly, every shift, no exceptions. Read them now. I read, 1. Synchronize your watch with the master clock in the main lobby before starting any other tasks. Your watch must match the master clock within 2 seconds. 2. Between 2200 hours and 2215 hours, check all external doors. Each door must be locked and the seal must be intact. If you find a door unlocked or a broken seal, radio immediately on channel 6 and wait for instructions. 3. Do not acknowledge anyone who calls you by your first name between 2230 hours and 0500 hours. Respond only to custodian or your last name. 4. The men's restroom has 4 stalls. The women's restroom has 5 stalls. Count them at the start of your shift. If either restroom contains a different number of stalls, exit immediately, lock the door from the outside, and radio on channel 6. 5. Clean the main lobby between 2215 hours and 2300 hours. Do not clean the lobby before 2215 or after 2300. If you are interrupted during this task, note the exact time and complete the cleaning later only if time permits. 6. The building has 6 external doors, 2 main entrances north and south, 2 emergency exits east and west, and 2 service entrances west loading dock and west personnel. Each door is numbered. Verify the numbers match the map in this notebook. If a door appears that is not on the map, do not open it or touch the handle. 7. Between midnight and 0200 hours, the vending machines in the corridor may make sounds. This is normal. Do not investigate the sounds. Do not approach the vending machines during this window. 8. If you hear footsteps on the roof, continue your assigned task. Do not go outside to investigate. Do not look out windows during this time. If the footsteps circle the building more than 3 complete rotations, radio on channel 6. 9. The parking lot lights operate on a timer. They will dim at 0100 hours and return to full brightness at 0500 hours. This is normal. Do not adjust the timer or attempt to restore full brightness during the dim period. 10. A white pickup truck may park in the northwest corner of the lot between 0200 hours and 0300 hours. Do not approach the truck. Do not make eye contact with anyone in or near the truck. Continue your tasks as usual. 11. If the main lobby thermostat reads below 55 degrees Fahrenheit, seal the men's restroom door with the red tape in your custodial cart. Use 3 complete rotations of tape around the door frame. Radio on channel 6 after sealing. 12. Do not enter the mechanical room between 0300 hours and 0400 hours. If a task requires mechanical room access during this window, delay it until 0400 hours. 13. Inventory the supply closet at 0430 hours exactly. Count all items and record quantities in this notebook. If any count differs from the previous shift's count by more than 2 items, radio on channel 6 before continuing. I read through the list twice. Vernon watched me without expression. Questions? What happens if I break a rule? Don't break them. What are these rules protecting against? Vernon closed the notebook and handed it to me. Your shift starts in 40 minutes. Store your personal items in your locker. Change into the uniform, it's hanging inside. There's a map in the notebook showing the building layout and the door numbers. Study it. At 21:45, go to the main lobby and synchronize your watch. At 2200 hours, begin your shift with the door check. I'll be here until 2230 hours if you need anything. After that, you're alone until 0600. Who else works here? Day custodian works 0600 to 1400. Assistant manager works 1400 to 2200. Manager works variable hours. You'll meet them eventually. Right now, focus on the rules. He turned toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. The notebook is the current revision. Rules may be amended. If you find a revised page in your locker, remove the old page and insert the new one. Amendments take effect immediately. He left. The door closed behind him with the same pneumatic hiss as the exterior door. I stood in the locker room holding the notebook, the key ring, the radio, the flashlight, the measuring tape, and the watch. The overhead fluorescent buzzed faintly. The mirror above the sink showed me looking tired and uncertain. I opened my locker. The uniform was hanging inside. Gray pants, gray shirt, both with the Rest Stop logo embroidered on them. A name tag with Collins printed in white letters. Black non-slip shoes in my size still in the box. I changed quickly and stored my duffel bag in the locker. The uniform fit well enough. The shoes were stiff and new. I clipped the radio to my belt, put the flashlight in my pocket, and hung the keyring on a carabiner attached to my belt loop. The watch went on my left wrist. It read 1809, but Vernon had said I needed to synchronize it with the master clock. I opened the notebook again and flipped past the rules page. The next page showed a simple floor plan of the building. Rectangular layout, main lobby in the center with restrooms on the east side, vending machine corridor on the west side, office spaces and storage on the south side, custodial and mechanical on the north side. 6 doors marked and numbered. 1 north main, 2 south main, 3 east emergency, 4 west emergency, 5 west loading, 6 west personnel. The map included measurements: north-south length, 42 meters, east-west width, 36 meters. The following pages were blank except for headers. Shift log, inventory record, incident report. I studied the map until I could picture the layout with my eyes closed. 20 minutes had passed. I left the locker room and walked through the hallway toward the main lobby. The building was quiet except for the furnace and the hum of fluorescent lights. The hallway opened into the main lobby, a large rectangular space with tile floors, plastic seating bolted to the floor, informational posters about highway safety, and the 2 main entrances on opposite ends. The north entrance had a double glass door. The south entrance matched it exactly. Large windows flanked each entrance. Outside, the parking lot lights were fully bright now, and I could see 1 car remaining near the south entrance. The master clock was mounted above the north entrance, large and round with black numbers on a white face. It read 1834-17. I adjusted my watch to match exactly. Vernon appeared from the office corridor. He was carrying a clipboard and didn't look at me directly. Good. You synchronized. The current assistant manager is leaving now. That's her car. After she leaves, you'll have the building to yourself except for travelers using the restrooms. Public access hours are 24 hours, but traffic is minimal overnight. Most people stop during daylight. A woman in a different uniform emerged from the office corridor, nodded to Vernon, and walked out the south entrance without looking at me. Through the windows, I watched her get into the car and drive away. The parking lot was empty now. Vernon checked his clipboard. I'm going to walk you through the building once. After that, you're on your own. He led me through every space. The men's restroom, 4 stalls, 3 sinks, 2 urinals, tile floor, harsh lighting, a faint smell of industrial cleaner. I counted the stalls twice. 4. The women's restroom, 5 stalls, 4 sinks, tile floor, same lighting, same smell. 5 stalls, the vending machine corridor, 6 machines total, 3 for snacks, 2 for drinks, 1 for coffee. A small seating area with 4 chairs, fluorescent lights, no windows. The storage spaces, cleaning supplies, paper products, salt and sand for the parking lot, spare parts for the vending machines, everything labeled and organized. The mechanical room, furnace, water heater, electrical panel, ventilation equipment. Hot and loud. Vernon showed me the thermostat control and said I shouldn't touch it unless instructed. Back in the main lobby, Vernon pointed to a desk near the north entrance. That's your station when you're not actively cleaning. Keep your notebook and radio there. If travelers need directions or have questions, answer briefly and return to your tasks. He checked his watch. 2100 hours, I'm leaving in 90 minutes. You start at 2200. Use the time to review the rules and prepare your cart. For the next 90 minutes, I read the rules 4 more times, organized the custodial cart, verified the battery supply, and walked the building 3 times to memorize distances and door locations. Vernon stayed in the office, visible through the window, but not interacting with me. At 22:27, he emerged with his coat on. He walked to the north entrance, paused, and looked back at me. Channel 6. Any problems, call immediately. Don't improvise. Don't skip steps. Don't rationalize exceptions. Follow the rules exactly. Yes, sir? He pushed through the door and walked to a truck parked near the service entrance. I watched him drive away. The parking lot was empty now except for the yellow lights and the darkness beyond their reach. I was alone. I checked my watch. 22:29:43, 30 seconds until my shift officially started. I stood at the custodial desk with the notebook open to the rules page, the radio on channel 6, and the key ring ready. At exactly 22:00, I began the door check. Door 1, north main entrance, locked, seal intact. The seal was a thin strip of tape across the seam, white with a date stamp. Today's date. Door 2, south main entrance, locked, seal intact, same tape. I walked to the east side. Door 3, east emergency exit, locked, seal intact. This door had a push bar on the inside and an alarm sticker, but the seal was the same white tape. Door 4, west emergency exit, locked, seal intact. I went to the service corridor. Door 5, west loading dock, locked, seal intact. Heavy door, industrial lock, seal more firmly applied than the others. Door 6, west personnel entrance, the one I'd used to enter, locked, seal intact. 6 doors, all accounted for, all locked, all sealed. I recorded this in the notebook under shift log, 22:14. Door check complete, all secure. The main lobby cleaning was next. I retrieved the custodial cart from the locker room and pushed it into the lobby. The cart held a mop, a bucket, cleaning solution, microfiber cloths, a broom, a dustpan, and trash bags. I started at the north end and worked south, wiping down surfaces, emptying the 2 small trash cans, sweeping the tile floor, mopping high traffic areas. The work was straightforward and familiar. I'd cleaned professionally before during college. The building was well maintained and not very dirty. The main challenge was the size of the lobby and the need to finish before 23 and up. At 22:51, I was finishing the mopping when I heard the front door open. A man entered through the north entrance, middle-aged, heavy winter coat, trucker hat. He walked past me toward the men's restroom without speaking. I continued mopping. 2 minutes later, he returned, pushed back through the north entrance, and disappeared into the parking lot. I heard an engine start and fade. I checked my watch. 22:56:12. 4 minutes to finish. I mopped the area near the north entrance where he'd walked, returned the cart to its station, and checked my watch again. 22:59:38. The lobby was clean. I'd completed the task within the allowed window. I returned to the custodial desk and updated the shift log. 22:15:22:59. Lobby cleaned, 1 visitor during task, no interruptions to schedule. The next rule didn't specify a task until midnight, when I was supposed to avoid the vending machines. I decided to do a walking patrol of the building to stay busy and learn the space better. At 23:17, I was walking through the office corridor when the radio crackled. Custodian, radio check. Vernon's voice, flat and professional. I unclipped the radio. This is custodian, radio clear. Confirmed, maintain schedule, out. The radio went silent. I clipped it back to my belt and continued the patrol. The building remained quiet. Occasional sounds from the furnace. The hum of fluorescent lights. My footsteps on the tile. Outside, through the windows, the parking lot stayed empty. At 23:58, I returned to the custodial desk and watched the master clock. 2 minutes until midnight. 2 minutes until the vending machine window began. The second hand swept past 12, midnight exactly. I sat at the desk with the notebook open and waited. The vending machines were one corridor away, out of sight, but within earshot if they made noise. 5 minutes passed. Nothing. 10 minutes. Still nothing. At 00:16, I heard it, a mechanical grinding sound like a vending machine motor struggling, then a thunk like something dropping into the retrieval slot. I wrote in the notebook, 00:16. Vending machine sounds did not investigate per Rule 7. The sounds continued intermittently. Another grind at 00:23, a different thunk at 00:31, a whirring sound at 00:44. Each time I noted it in the log and stayed at my desk. At 00:58, the sound stopped. At 01:00 exactly, the parking lot lights dimmed to about 30% brightness. I watched through the lobby windows as the lot fell into deeper shadow. The perimeter was now barely visible, and the tree line beyond was completely dark. Rule 9 said this was normal. I noted it in the log and checked the next rule. Rule 10. White pickup truck, northwest corner between 02 Salcalbar and 03 Zoro. I had an hour before that window. The next scheduled task was my break at 01:30. At 01:29, I walked to the locker room, closed the door, and sat on the bench. I'd brought a protein bar and a bottle of water in my duffel bag. I ate slowly and drank half the water. The room was silent except for the muffled furnace sounds through the wall. At 01:59:30, I returned to the custodial desk. I positioned myself so I could see through the north lobby windows toward the northwest corner of the parking lot. The lights were still dimmed. Visibility was poor, but I could make out the shapes of the parking space lines and the edge of the lot. At 02:03, a vehicle entered the lot. A white pickup truck. It drove slowly across the lot and parked in the northwest corner, exactly where Rule 10 said it might. The truck's lights turned off. I could see its silhouette against the darkness. Cab, bed, possibly a toolbox or equipment in the bed. The truck sat motionless. I watched for 3 minutes. No one got out. No movement visible inside. Rule 10 said not to approach, not to make eye contact. I stayed at my desk and looked away, focusing instead on the notebook. At 02:17, I glanced back toward the truck. It was still there, still motionless. I updated the log. So 02:03, white pickup arrived NW corner per Rule 10, no approach, no contact. The truck remained in the lot until 02:54, then the lights came on. It backed out slowly and it drove away north on the highway access road. I never saw anyone get in or out. I never saw movement inside the cab. At 03 Law, with the truck gone, I began preparing for the next task, avoiding the mechanical room until 04 July. At 03:37, I heard footsteps on the roof. They were distinct, the sound of boots on the flat commercial roof, walking at an even pace. The footsteps started near the north end of the building and moved south, then east, then north again. A circuit around the perimeter of the roof. I froze at my desk and counted. The footsteps completed one full circuit. Then they started a second circuit, same pace, same path. Rule 8 said footsteps were possible and I should continue my task. I should not investigate. I should not look out windows. If the footsteps circled more than 3 complete rotations, I should radio. I continued sitting at my desk with my eyes on the notebook. The footsteps completed the second circuit. Then a third circuit began. I counted the paces. North to south, approximately 42 meters based on the map, about 50 paces at the speed I was hearing. South to east, approximately 36 meters, about 40 paces. East to north, 42 meters, 50 paces. North to west, 36 meters, 40 paces. Total 180 paces per circuit. The third circuit completed. I waited. The footsteps stopped. I noted in the log 0337 0351. Footsteps on roof, 3 complete circuits stopped before 4th per Rule 8. The building was silent again except for the furnace. At 040 I was permitted to enter the mechanical room if needed. I didn't need to, so I stayed at my desk and reviewed the remaining rules. The next scheduled task was inventory at 0430 exactly. At 042950 I walked to the supply closet and opened the door. Shelves on 3 walls, everything labeled. I pulled out my notebook and the previous shift's inventory page which had been clipped inside. I counted each item and compared. Rolls of toilet paper, previous count 48, current count 47. Difference: 1. Paper towels, previous 36, current 35. Difference: 1. Bottles of cleaning solution, previous 12, current 12. Difference: 0. Boxes of trash bags, previous 8, current 8. Difference: 0. Bottles of hand soap, previous 22, current 22. Difference: 0. Salt bags, 50 LOB, previous 9, current 9. Difference: 0. Light bulbs, fluorescent, previous 24, current 24. Difference: 0. Batteries, D-cell, previous 32, current 30. Difference: 2. The toilet paper and paper towel differences were within the acceptable range of 2 items. The battery difference was exactly 2. Rule 13 said to radio if any count differed by more than 2 items. None of them did. I recorded the new counts in my notebook and clipped my page in place of the previous shift's page. The task took 9 minutes. At 0448, the parking lot lights returned to full brightness. The change was sudden and harsh after hours of dimness. I could see the entire lot clearly now. Empty, clean, white lines stark against the asphalt. I checked the master clock. 04:59 and 03. 1 hour left in my shift. The building remained quiet. I did a final patrol. Checked all 6 doors again, verified both restrooms still had the correct number of stalls. Confirmed the mechanical room thermostat read 64 degrees. Noted that the main lobby remained clean. At 0547 I heard a vehicle. I looked out the north windows and saw headlights approaching. A sedan pulled into the lot and parked near the south entrance. A woman got out, walked to the women's restroom, spent 4 minutes inside, returned to her car, and drove away. At 6 Guadalajara, I heard the personnel entrance unlock. Vernon entered through the service corridor and walked into the lobby. He looked the same as he had 8 hours ago, same uniform, same neutral expression. How was the shift? Followed all the rules, everything in the log. I handed him the notebook. He flipped through the pages I'd filled out, reading each entry carefully. Door check on time. Lobby cleaned in window. Vending machines logged but not investigated. Truck appeared and departed, appropriately. Footsteps stopped at 3 circuits. Inventory within acceptable range. He closed the notebook. Good. Exactly right. What were the footsteps? Vernon looked at me for 3 seconds. Part of the job. Don't let it distract you. Follow the rules and you'll be fine. He handed the notebook back. Your shift is over. Day custodian arrives at 600. You're off until 2200 tonight. Get some rest. There's a motel 12 miles south, mile marker 275. Tell them you work here, they'll give you the rate. I'm coming back tonight. Every night for a month, then we'll discuss. I walked to the locker room, changed back into my street clothes, and stored the uniform in my locker. My hands were shaking slightly from fatigue and adrenaline. I hadn't slept in 20 hours. Vernon was waiting in the corridor when I emerged. He walked me to the personnel entrance and opened it from the inside. One more thing. Don't talk about the rules outside this building. Don't discuss the specifics with anyone except staff. If someone asks what you do, say you're a custodian, that's all. Why? Because the rules work when they're followed and they stop working when they're questioned. Go get some sleep. I walked out into the cold morning air. The sky was pale gray. My car was covered in a thin layer of frost. I drove south on the empty highway toward the motel Vernon had mentioned, my mind replaying footsteps and vending machine sounds in the motionless white truck. I didn't know what I was protecting against. I didn't understand the rules. But I'd earned 1/8 of $8,000 and I'd survived the first night. That would have to be enough. The motel was called the Pine View Lodge, though there were no pines in view, just a parking lot and the highway. The clerk at the desk recognized the rest stop name immediately and gave me a weekly rate. The room was small and clean. I closed the blackout curtains, set an alarm for 20 cour and fell asleep before I could think about the footsteps circling above me. I woke at 20:03 to the alarm. 7 hours of sleep, not enough but functional. I showered, ate a granola bar from the vending machine in the motel lobby and drove north through darkness to the rest stop. The parking lot had 4 cars scattered across it. I parked near the service entrance and walked to the door. The intercom crackled before I could press the buzzer. "Collins?" Vernon's voice. "Yes, sir." The door unlocked. I entered and walked to the locker room. Vernon was standing outside the custodial room door with a clipboard. "Second shift. Same rules. There's one amendment." He opened my locker and pulled out a single sheet of paper, already hole-punched to fit the notebook. The page had Amendment A1 effective immediately printed at the top, followed by a single rule. 14. If you hear your own voice calling to you from any direction, do not respond and do not investigate. Continue your assigned task. If the voice persists for more than 3 minutes, move to a different area of the building and resume tasks there. Vernon watched me read it. Remove page 1 from your notebook and replace it with this page. The original rules still apply. This is an addition. I opened the notebook, removed the original rules page, and inserted the amendment page. The new rule was now number 14, following the original 13. Why is this necessary? Because it's necessary. Don't ask why. Follow it. He left. I changed into my uniform, synchronized my watch with the master clock at 21:57, and began my second shift at exactly 22 August. The door check was identical to the previous night. All 6 doors locked and sealed. The lobby cleaning went smoothly. 2 travelers came through during the task, both using restrooms briefly and leaving without speaking to me. At midnight, the vending machine sounds started again. This time they were louder, grinding, thunking, whirring, and at 00:37 a sound like glass breaking inside one of the machines. I stayed at my desk and logged everything. At 01:00 the parking lot lights dimmed on schedule. At 02:09 the white pickup truck arrived and parked in the northwest corner. It sat motionless until 02:51, then drove away. Exactly like the previous night, as if following its own rules. No footsteps on the roof tonight. At 03:15, while I was walking through the office corridor on a routine patrol, I heard my name. Sarah. My voice. Exactly my voice, the tone I use when I'm uncertain or asking a question. It came from somewhere near the south end of the corridor beyond the office doors. I stopped walking. Rule 14. Do not respond. Do not investigate. Sarah? Again my voice, same tone, slightly louder, coming from the same direction. I turned around and walked back toward the main lobby. My hands were shaking. I gripped the flashlight in my pocket to steady them. Sarah, I need help. Still my voice. Now it sounded like it was coming from multiple directions. The corridor behind me, the vending machine area to my left, maybe the restrooms to my right. I couldn't tell for certain because I was walking away quickly, focused on reaching the custodial desk in the lobby. I checked my watch when I reached the desk, 03:16:40. The voice had been calling for 1 minute 40 seconds. Rule 14 said 3 minutes before I needed to move to a different area. The voice continued. Sarah, where are you? Sarah? It was coming from the office corridor now, clearly. My voice, but something was wrong with the rhythm. The pauses between words were slightly too long, like someone reading a script with poor timing. At 03:18:15, the voice stopped. 2 minutes 35 seconds total, just under the 3-minute threshold. I logged it. 03:15, 03:18. Heard own voice per amendment A1 did not respond. Voice ceased before 3-minute mark. The rest of the shift passed without incident. Inventory at 4:30 showed acceptable variances. The parking lot lights brightened at 05 Zatsure. Vernon arrived at 06 Zatsure and reviewed my log. You handled the voice correctly. Don't let it bother you. It's testing compliance. What's testing compliance? Vernon closed the notebook. The rules. Get some rest. I drove back the motel and slept. The pattern held for 6 more shifts. Each night brought small variations. Sometimes the vending machines were louder. Sometimes the white truck arrived earlier or later within its window. Sometimes the voice called and sometimes it didn't. On the 4th night, footsteps circled the roof 4 times and I had to radio. Vernon responded within 30 seconds, told me to continue my tasks, and said he'd noted in the incident log. On the 7th night at 03:42, I was emptying trash in the vending machine corridor when I heard breathing. Close, immediate, right behind me. The sound of someone exhaling through their nose, slow and steady. I turned around. The corridor was empty. The breathing continued, same location, same volume. As if someone was standing directly behind me, invisible. No rule covered this. I checked my notebook quickly. Nothing about breathing. Nothing about invisible presences. The closest rule was 14, about the voice, but this wasn't a voice. I stepped forward, putting distance between myself and the sound. The breathing didn't follow. It stayed in the same spot, audible but directionless now that I'd moved. I left the corridor and went to the custodial desk. I could still hear the breathing faintly, like it was coming through the walls. I picked up the radio. Vernon, this is custodian. I'm experiencing something not covered in the rules. Requesting guidance. 30 seconds of static then. Describe it. Breathing sounds in the vending corridor, close proximity but no visible source. Not addressed in current rules. Is it speaking? No. Is it blocking your path or preventing you from completing tasks? No. Then continue your tasks. Ignore the sounds. If it escalates, radio immediately. Copy. I clipped the radio back to my belt. The breathing continued for another 20 minutes, then stopped abruptly at 04:07. At 06:00, Vernon reviewed my log and told me an amendment would be added. The next night, when I opened my locker, there was a new page. Amendment A2, effective immediately. 15. Auditory anomalies not addressed in existing rules should be ignored if they do not prevent task completion. Examples include breathing, whispering, mechanical sounds from unknown sources, and repetitive musical notes. If any auditory anomaly continues for more than 30 minutes, radio on channel 6, 16. Between 0300 and 0400 hours, do not enter the women's restroom. If a traveler requests access during this window, inform them the restroom is temporarily closed for maintenance, and direct them to the men's restroom or ask them to wait until 0400 hours. I replaced the previous amendment page with the new one. 2 more rules, 15 total now, then 16. The nights accumulated. I learned the rhythm of the building, the sounds it made normally, the sounds that meant something was testing the boundaries. I learned to distinguish between the furnace's regular groaning and the other groaning that came from nowhere specific. I learned that the master clock sometimes ran 3 seconds fast and I needed to check it twice each shift. On the 12th night, someone broke a rule. At 00:23, I was at the custodial desk when the radio crackled. All units, this is Vernon. Day custodian entered the building through the south entrance at 23:42 hours. Unauthorized entry outside scheduled shift. He is not responding to radio contact. If you encounter him, do not engage in conversation. Direct him to exit immediately through the nearest door. If he does not comply, radio immediately." I acknowledged and stayed at my desk. The day custodian wasn't supposed to be here. His shift ended at 14:09 hours ago. At 0:41, I saw him. He came through the office corridor into the main lobby, 50s heavy-set, wearing his uniform but no radio on his belt. He walked slowly, looking around like he'd never seen the building before. I stood up from the desk. "Sir, you need to exit the building. Your shift isn't scheduled." He looked at me but didn't seem to see me. His eyes were focused somewhere past my shoulder. "I forgot something," he said. His voice was flat, mechanical. "I forgot something in the mechanical room." Rule 12. The mechanical room was off-limits between 030 and 040. It was currently 0043. But Vernon had said not to engage in conversation, just direct him to exit. "You need to leave now. Use the south entrance." He turned away from me and walked toward the corridor that led to the mechanical room. I unclipped my radio. "Vernon, day custodian is not complying. He's heading toward the mechanical room. Do not follow him. Return to your desk and continue your shift." "He's going to..." "Return to your desk, that's an order." I clipped the radio back and stayed in the lobby. I could hear the day custodian's footsteps receding down the corridor, then the sound of a door opening. The mechanical room door. 3 minutes passed. No sounds from the corridor. At 0047, the day custodian emerged from the corridor. He walked through the lobby without looking at me, pushed through the south entrance and crossed the parking lot to a car I hadn't noticed before. He got in and drove away. Vernon's voice came through the radio. "Custodian, confirm he has left the premises." Confirmed. He drove away southbound. "Return to standard tasks. A report will be filed. You will not see him again." "What happened to him?" "Static then. He entered the mechanical room outside permitted hours on his own shift 3 days ago. Continue your tasks." The radio went silent. I didn't see the day custodian again. Vernon never mentioned him again. When I arrived the next night, there was a different car in the day shift parking space. On the 15th night at 02:34, the main lobby thermostat read 53 degrees. I checked it twice to be certain. The temperature had dropped 12 degrees in less than an hour. The furnace was running. I could hear it laboring through the vents, but the temperature kept falling. Rule 11. Below 55 degrees, seal the men's restroom with red tape, 3 complete rotations, then radio. I retrieved the red tape from my custodial cart and walked to the men's restroom. The door was closed. I pressed my hand against it. Cold. Much colder than it should be. I began applying tape. Starting at the top left corner of the frame, I stretched the tape across the seam where the door met the frame, working my way around. Across the top, down the right side, across the bottom, up the left side. First rotation complete. I started the second rotation, overlapping the first, then the third rotation, making the seal thick and complete. When I finished, I stepped back and examined the work. 3 full rotations, no gaps, no wrinkles. The tape glowed faintly red under the fluorescent lights. I radioed. "Vernon, main lobby temperature is 53 degrees. Men's restroom sealed per Rule 11. Confirmed. Do not remove the seal under any circumstances. If the temperature drops below 45 degrees, go to the locker room, close the door, and wait for further instructions." Copy. I returned to the custodial desk and monitored the thermostat. At 02:41, it read 51 degrees. At 02:49, it read 48 degrees. At 02:53, someone knocked on the men's restroom door from inside. 3 knocks, evenly spaced. Deliberate. I stayed at my desk. No rule said what to do if something knocked from inside a sealed room. Vernon had said not to remove the seal under any circumstances. 3 more knocks, harder this time. Then a voice muffled by the door and the tape but still audible. "Let me out, I'm locked in." Male voice, young, frightened. Not my voice. Not anyone I recognized. "Please, I'm locked in here, I can't open the door." The thermostat read 46 degrees. I picked up my radio. "Vernon, there's someone in the sealed restroom." Male voice requesting exit. "There is no one in the restroom. Continue your tasks." I can hear him knocking. "There is no one in the restroom. Do not remove the seal. If the voice persists, move to a different area of the building." The knocking continued, rapid now, frantic. The voice was louder. "Please, it's freezing in here. The lights went out. Please let me out." The thermostat read 44 degrees. I stood up, grabbed my notebook and radio, and walked quickly to the office corridor. I could still hear the knocking echoing through the building and the voice screaming now, "Help me, oh God, help me, please." At 02:58, the knocking stopped. The voice stopped. The thermostat read 43 degrees. I stayed in the office corridor, sitting on the floor with my back against the wall, watching my breath fog in the cold air. At 03:15, I felt the temperature start to rise. At 03:23, I walked back to the main lobby and checked the thermostat, 51 degrees. At 03:36, it read 58 degrees. The men's restroom door was still sealed. No sounds came from inside. At 04:30, I did the inventory count. Everything was within acceptable range except the red tape. Previous count 4 rolls, current count 3 rolls. Difference, 1 roll. I noted it in the log. At 06:02, Vernon reviewed my log and inspected the sealed restroom door. "You did this correctly, exactly right. Was someone actually in there?" Vernon peeled away the red tape carefully, 3 rotations coming off in a continuous strip. He opened the men's restroom door. I looked inside. 4 stalls, 3 sinks, 2 urinals. Empty, normal temperature, fluorescent lights working. The rules protect you if you follow them. They can't protect you if you don't. The day custodian thought he knew better. He thought he could improvise. He was wrong. What happened to him in the mechanical room? Vernon threw the tape into a trash bin and turned to face me. "He's still in there. Not in any way you'd recognize, but he's in there. That's why we don't go in during the restricted hours. That's why we follow the rules exactly." I felt my stomach turn over. "He's been in there for 12 days? 12 days here. Longer where he is. Time works differently when you break the rules. You've done 15 shifts without breaking any rules. You're doing well. Keep doing well." He walked away toward the service corridor. I changed out of my uniform and sat in the locker room for 5 minutes trying to steady my hands. The day custodian was still in the mechanical room, or something that had been the day custodian was in there. I didn't know which was worse. I drove to the motel and didn't sleep well. The next night there were 2 more amendments waiting in my locker. Amendment A3, effective immediately, 17. If the main lobby temperature drops below 55 degrees and you seal the men's restroom per Rule 11, any sounds or voices coming from inside the sealed room should be ignored. Do not unseal the door until the temperature rises above 55 degrees and you receive explicit instruction from management via radio. 18. Between 0200 hours and 0300 hours, do not make direct eye contact with your reflection in any mirror or reflective surface. If you must use a mirror during this window, look at your reflection's chin or forehead, never directly at the eyes. 19. If you find a door or corridor that is not marked on the building map in your notebook, do not enter it. Mark its location on your map with a red X. Note the time you discovered it in your shift log and radio immediately. Do not return to that location for the remainder of your shift. 2 had become 3. The rules were growing. I replaced the previous amendment page and began my shift. At 02:27, while walking past the mirrors in the women's restroom during a routine cleaning check, I remembered Rule 18. It was 02:27 inside the restricted window. I was looking at the mirrors. I jerked my gaze down, focusing on the sink instead. In my peripheral vision, I could see my reflection, but I didn't look at it directly. I finished the check quickly, eyes on the floor, and exited the restroom. My heart was racing. How many times had I glanced at my reflection during that window on previous nights before the rule existed? What would have happened? The rules were protecting me, Vernon had said. But from what? On the 18th night at 03:08, I found a door. I was walking through the office corridor doing a patrol when I noticed it. A gray metal door on the east wall between the manager's office and the storage room. No number, no label, no window. Just a door with a standard handle. I pulled out my notebook and checked the map. The east wall of the office corridor showed 2 doors, manager's office and storage room. No door between them. The wall between them was supposed to be solid. Rule 19. Mark with red X, note time, radio, do not enter, do not return. I drew a red X on my map at the approximate location. I wrote in my log, 0308, found unmarked door on east wall office corridor between manager's office and storage room not on building map, did not enter per Rule 19. I radioed. Vernon custodian reporting, found an unmarked door not on the building map, east wall office corridor, marked and logged per Rule 19. 30 seconds of static. Then, confirmed, do not approach that door for the rest of your shift. Continue tasks in other areas. A work crew will address it tomorrow. What's behind it? Not your concern. Stay away from it. I walked back to the main lobby and stayed there for the rest of the shift, doing busy work tasks and watching the master clock. At 04:30, I did the inventory from the supply closet on the west side of the building, as far from the office corridor as possible. At 06:00, Vernon arrived and immediately walked to the office corridor. I followed at a distance. The unmarked door was gone. The wall was solid, no seam, no indication a door had ever been there. Vernon turned to me. Did you open it? No, sir. Followed Rule 19 exactly. Good. If you had opened it, we'd be having a different conversation. He walked back to the lobby. Doors appear sometimes. They're testing you. The rule exists because people used to open them. No one who opened one ever came back to work here. Where did they go? Somewhere the rules can't reach. Don't worry about them. Worry about following your rules. 22 shifts. I was more than 2/3 through the first month. The paychecks were depositing on schedule. Weekly direct deposit, exactly what I'd been promised. The money was real. The rules were real. What existed on the other side of the rules remained unclear. On the 24th night at 01:17, the power went out. Complete darkness. The fluorescent lights died. The exit signs died. The parking lot lights died. Only the emergency lights stayed on, dim, battery-powered units at floor level near exits, providing barely enough light to navigate. My radio crackled immediately. Custodian, this is Vernon. Acknowledge. Power is out. Emergency lights only. Confirmed. This is a grid failure, not building specific. Stand by for emergency protocols. I waited in the darkness at my custodial desk, flashlight in hand. Vernon's voice returned. Emergency protocol activation. I'm transmitting 3 rules. Write them in your notebook under a new section labeled Emergency Protocols. Copy them exactly. I flipped to a blank page in my notebook and wrote Emergency Protocols at the top. Vernon began. Emergency Protocol 1. During any power failure lasting more than 5 minutes, move immediately to the locker room and secure the door from the inside using the deadbolt. Do not emerge until power is restored or you receive direct verbal contact from management. I wrote it down word for word. Emergency Protocol 2. If you hear anyone or anything attempting to open the locker room door while you are secured inside during a power failure, do not respond and do not open the door. Wait for power restoration. I wrote it down. Emergency Protocol 3. If power has not been restored within 2 hours of the failure, use the red phone in the locker room to call the emergency number written on the wall above it. Do not use your personal phone or the regular radio. I wrote it down. Confirm you have copied all 3 protocols. Confirmed. Moving to locker room now. I grabbed my notebook, flashlight, and radio and walked quickly through the dark building. The emergency lights cast strange shadows, making familiar corridors look distorted. I reached the locker room, entered, and closed the door. There was a deadbolt on the inside that I'd never noticed before. I engaged it. The room was dark except for my flashlight beam. I sat on the bench and waited. At 01:24, 7 minutes after the power failure, I heard footsteps in the corridor outside, not the measured footsteps from the roof. These were erratic, fast, then slow, then stopping, then starting again. Multiple sets of footsteps overlapping. The locker room door handle rattled. I stayed silent on the bench, flashlight pointed at the door. The deadbolt was engaged. Emergency Protocol 2 said not to respond. The handle rattled again, harder. Then a voice. "Hey, you in there? Open up, the power's out. We need to check the electrical panel." Male voice, unfamiliar, casual tone. But there was no "we" on my shift. I was alone. "Come on, open the door. We're maintenance. We need to get the power back on." I said nothing. The flashlight beam trembled slightly because my hands were shaking. "Hello? I know someone's in there. I can see the light under the door. Just open up. We're trying to help." The voice changed slightly. Still male, but a different pitch, like someone else was speaking now. "Sarah, it's okay. It's just us. Open the door." My name. But Rule 3 said not to acknowledge anyone who called me by my first name during restricted hours. It was 01:28, well within the restricted window. The door handle rattled violently. Something hit the door, a heavy impact, then another. The door shook, but the deadbolt held. "Open this fucking door right now!" The voice was angry now, inhuman in its rage. Multiple voices overlapping. "Open it, let us in, we need to get in there." I pulled my knees to my chest and kept the flashlight trained on the door. The impacts continued, boom, boom, boom. The metal door dented inward slightly but didn't break. At 01:34, the impacts stopped. The voices stopped. Silence. I stayed on the bench listening. My radio was clipped to my belt, but I didn't use it. Vernon had said to wait for power restoration. At 02:11, the power came back. Fluorescent lights flickered on overhead. The corridor lights came on. Through the gap under the door, I could see the hallway was empty. My radio crackled. "Custodian, power has been restored. You are clear to exit the locker room and resume standard protocols." I unclipped the radio with shaking hands. "Copy. Exiting now." I stood, turned the deadbolt, and opened the door slowly. The corridor was empty and normal. The door showed no signs of impact, no dents, no marks. It looked exactly as it always had. I walked to the main lobby. The master clock read 02:13. I'd been in the locker room for 56 minutes. I checked every room in the building. Everything was normal. No signs of anyone else present. The emergency lights had switched off automatically when power returned. At 06:00, Vernon reviewed my log and the new emergency protocols page in my notebook. "You followed the protocols exactly. That's why you're here talking to me." What was trying to get into the locker room? What's always here? It just has more freedom when the power's out. The lights keep it at a distance, constrain it. Darkness removes those constraints. That's why the emergency protocols exist. What is it? Vernon closed my notebook. Something that was here before the rest stop was built. Something that's always been here, maybe since before there were words for it. The building contains it, channels it, keeps it manageable. The rules define the relationship. As long as you follow the rules, you're protected. Break the rules and you become part of what's being contained. He handed me the notebook. You've done 24 shifts, 6 more and you've completed the first month. After that, you can choose to stay or leave. Most people leave. The ones who stay usually last another month, maybe 2. Very few make it to a year. No one makes it to 2 years unchanged. Unchanged how? You start to hear things even when you're off shift. You start seeing doors that aren't on maps in other buildings. You start remembering shifts you haven't worked yet. The rules protect you inside the building, but exposure has cumulative effects. Some people decide the money isn't worth it. And you? Vernon smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm on year 7. I stopped sleeping normally after year 2. I see the rest stop even when I'm at home. I know every inch of this building better than I know my own face. But I follow the rules and the rules keep me functional. Mostly. He walked toward the service corridor. 6 more shifts, then you decide. I drove back to the motel as dawn broke over the highway. My hands were still shaking slightly. I'd earned 3/4 of the $8,000 I needed. 6 more shifts would put me over the target. But Vernon's words stayed with me, unchanged. What would I be like after a full month? After 2 months? After a year? I slept poorly, dreaming of footsteps and voices and doors that led nowhere. The final 6 shifts passed in a blur of compliance. Each night brought variations on familiar patterns. The vending machines, the white truck, the occasional voice calling my name, the mirrors I avoided during the restricted window. On the 27th night, the thermostat dropped again and I sealed the men's restroom. On the 29th night, I found another unmarked door, this time in the storage room. Both times I followed the rules exactly. On the 30th night, my last shift of the month, Vernon met me in the locker room before I clocked in. You've completed 30 shifts without breaking a rule. That's rare. Most people break at least one small rule out of curiosity or fatigue. You haven't. I need the money. It's more than that. You have discipline. You take the rules seriously. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. This is your offer for month 2. Same pay, same hours, but there will be additional amendments. The rules get more complex the longer you stay. Things test you harder. I took the envelope. What if I say no? You leave tonight after your shift. You never come back. You never talk about what you saw here. The rules stop protecting you because you're no longer bound by them, but you're also no longer exposed to what's contained here. For most people, that's the right choice. And if I say yes? You work another 30 shifts. At the end of month 2, we have this conversation again. Very few people make it to month 3. I opened the envelope. The contract inside offered the same pay rate, with a bonus after 60 days. I could clear my student loans entirely if I made it through month 2. I'll think about it during the shift, Vernon nodded. That's fine. Give me your answer at 0600. I completed my 30th shift without incident. The building was almost quiet. No vending machine sounds, no footsteps, no voices. The white truck appeared and departed on schedule. The parking lot lights dimmed and brightened on schedule. Everything was routine. At 0430, during the inventory count, I found a new item on the shelves that hadn't been there before. A black notebook, identical to mine but with different handwriting inside. I opened it. The first page had a name, Robert Chen, day custodian. Below that, shift logs, dated 3 weeks ago. The handwriting was shaky, uncertain. The entries described the same rules I knew, the same anomalies. On the 5th page, there was a final entry. I think I can fix the furnace problem if I go in during the night. It's just mechanical. The rules are superstition. I'm going in at 0:45. That was the last entry. The rest of the pages were blank. I put the notebook back on the shelf and finished the inventory. When I recorded the count in my own notebook, I listed the black notebook as a new item. Previous count 0, current count 1. At 060, Vernon reviewed my log. He saw the black notebook entry and nodded. You found Chen's notebook. He left it behind when he went into the mechanical room. It appears sometimes in the inventory, sometimes in the lockers, sometimes other places. A reminder. A reminder of what? That the rules aren't superstition. They're documentation of what works and what doesn't. People who treat them as superstition don't last. He closed my notebook. Have you decided about month 2? I thought about Vernon's warning, unchanged. I thought about the day custodian who was still in the mechanical room somehow. I thought about my student loans and my empty bank account and the fact that I'd survived 30 shifts by following simple instructions. I'll do month 2. Vernon pulled out a pen and a form. Sign here. Report for shift at 2200 hours tonight. There will be new amendments waiting. I signed. That night, when I opened my locker before my 31st shift, there were 4 new amendment pages. Amendment A4, effective immediately 20. The building has 6 external doors. If you find a 7th door during any patrol or task, do not approach within 10 feet. Mark it on your map, radio immediately, and avoid that corridor for the remainder of the shift. 21. If you see another custodian during your shift, ask them what the current date is. If they answer with yesterday's date or a date in the future, do not interact further. Move to a different area immediately and radio on channel 6. 22. Between 0330 and 0400 hours, do not count anything. Do not count your steps, do not count items, do not count stalls or doors or lights. If you must perform inventory during this window, delay it until exactly 0400 hours. 23. If the master clock ever reads the same time twice in succession, for example, you check it and it reads 02:15, then you check it again 30 seconds later and it still reads 02:15. Leave the main lobby immediately and go to the locker room. Wait there for exactly 15 minutes by your watch, then return to the main lobby. The clock should have corrected itself. If it hasn't, radio for emergency protocols. 4 new rules, 23 total now. I replaced the old amendment pages with the new ones and began my shift. Month 2 was harder. The rules accumulated. 23 became 26, then 29, then 32. Each amendment responded to something I'd experienced or something another custodian had experienced. The building was teaching me its boundaries through careful incrementalism. On shift 43 at 0317, I saw another custodian in the office corridor. She was wearing the same uniform as me, carrying the same flashlight. She looked tired. Rule 21. Ask the date. Excuse me, what's today's date? She looked at me without expression. February 19th. It was February 19th. Correct answer. I relaxed slightly, then she spoke again. February 19th, last year. I turned and walked quickly toward the main lobby. Behind me, I heard her footsteps following, matching my pace exactly. I didn't look back. I reached the lobby and grabbed my radio. Vernon, Rule 21 situation. Custodian gave incorrect date, currently in main lobby. Stay there. Do not interact further. She'll dissipate within 5 minutes. I stayed at the custodial desk, facing away from the corridor. I could feel someone standing behind me, close enough to touch. I didn't turn around. At 0323, the presence disappeared. The air temperature normalized. I was alone again. On shift 52, I found the 7th door. It was on the south wall of the vending machine corridor between 2 vending machines that I knew were supposed to be side by side. The door was wooden, old-looking, with a brass handle worn smooth. It didn't match the rest of the building's aesthetic. I stayed 15 feet away, marked it on my map, and radioed. Vernon told me to avoid the corridor entirely. For the rest of the shift, I used alternate routes, adding 5 minutes to every patrol circuit. On shift 59, My second to last shift of month 2, the master clock froze. I checked it at 02:14:33. I walked a full patrol circuit, approximately 12 minutes. I returned to the lobby and checked the clock. 02:14:33. Rule 23. Leave the lobby, go to locker room, wait exactly 15 minutes by my watch, return. I walked to the locker room, closed the door, and sat on the bench. I watched my watch for exactly 15 minutes, 02:27 to 02:42. When I returned to the lobby, the master clock read 02:43:06. It had corrected itself, jumping forward nearly 29 minutes. I logged it and continued my shift. Whatever had frozen the clock had been addressed by my compliance with Rule 23. On shift 60, my last shift of month 2, Vernon met me again before I clocked in. 60 shifts. You're in the 95th percentile. Most people are gone by now. Do I get another offer? Month 3 is different. The pay increases, but the commitment increases. Month 3 requires 90 shifts instead of 30. You can't quit in the middle. If you start month 3, you finish it or you don't leave at all. What does that mean? It means the rules bind you more deeply. You become part of the building's operational structure. You can't simply walk away. You'd have to be extracted, and extraction is complicated and expensive, and we don't do it unless absolutely necessary. I thought about my student loans. 2 months had cleared 80% of them. 3 more months would clear them entirely, plus give me a cushion for living expenses. What happens after month 3? Very few people make it to month 4. The ones who do usually stay for years. They become supervisors, managers, trainers. They're too exposed to go back to normal life. But they're protected as long as they follow the rules and maintain the building. And you? Are you protected? Vernon looked at me with those tired eyes. I'm protected. I'm also isolated. I haven't left this highway in 6 years. I sleep in a trailer behind the building. I eat meals delivered by supply truck. The rules are my life now. They're all I have. He handed me a new envelope. This is the month 3 contract. 90 shifts, increased pay, binding commitment. Read it carefully. If you sign it, you work your 61st shift tonight and you don't stop until shift 150. Do you understand? Yes. I took the envelope to the locker room and read the contract. The pay was triple what I'd been making. The terms were exactly as Vernon described. 90 consecutive shifts, no breaks, binding commitment with penalties for early termination that included forfeiture of all earnings and potential legal action. I sat on the bench with the contract in my hands. I thought about Robert Chen, still in the mechanical room. I thought about the custodian from last year standing in the corridor. I thought about Vernon sleeping in a trailer behind the building for 6 years. I thought about my student loans and my empty apartment in Milwaukee and the job market that had nothing for me. I thought about the rules and how good I'd become at following them. At 21:55, I signed the contract and clipped it to Vernon's clipboard outside his office. At 22:00, I began shift 61. The locker held 5 more amendment pages. Rules 33 through 47, 15 new rules for month 3. I read them all. 33. Do not speak to anyone between 0200 and 0230 hours. If you must radio, use only yes/no responses. If a traveler asks you a question during this window, point to printed instructions but do not vocalize. 34. If you find your own notebook lying somewhere other than where you left it, do not open it. Return it to its proper location and continue your tasks. If it appears a third time, radio immediately. 35. The building layout is shown on your map. If you walk a route that should take 4 minutes but it takes 7 minutes or longer, stop walking immediately. Count to 30. Begin walking again. The timing should correct itself. 36. Between 0100 and 0500 hours, your shadow may not move in alignment with the light sources. This is expected. Do not look directly at your shadow during this window. 37. If you hear music coming from any direction, identify the source within 30 seconds. If you cannot identify a mechanical or electronic source, leave that area immediately and radio on channel 6. 38. Do not write anything in your notebook except shift logs, inventory counts, and incident reports. Do not write personal notes, reminders, or observations. Keep all entries factual and operational. 39. If a traveler asks you for the time and your watch shows a different time than the master clock, give them the master clock time. Do not discuss the discrepancy. Do not check your watch against the clock more than once per hour. 40. The women's restroom should contain 5 stalls. If it contains 6, or more, exit immediately. Seal the door with red tape and radio. Do not count the stalls more than once per shift unless specifically instructed. 41. If the telephone in the office rings, answer it before the 3rd ring. Listen for the verification code. If the caller does not provide a valid code within 5 seconds, hang up without speaking and unplug the telephone from the wall. 42. Do not bring any personal items into the main lobby except your watch, radio, flashlight, and notebook. Keep your locker secured at all times. Personal items left unsecured may become incorporated into the building's inventory. 43. If you must use a restroom during your shift, use only the single-stall family restroom near the main entrance. Do not use the men's or women's multi-stall restrooms for personal use. 44. Between 0400 and 0500 hours, the parking lot may contain more than 10 vehicles even if no travelers have entered the building. This is expected. Do not investigate the vehicles. Do not note license plates or makes. 45. If the building's main entrance automatic doors activate without anyone approaching, count the activations. After the 3rd activation, stand at the custodial desk and face away from the doors until the activations cease. 46. Do not clean the same area twice in one shift unless specifically instructed or unless a spill or mess requires immediate attention. Repeated cleaning of an area may reinforce unintended patterns. 47. If you complete all assigned tasks and it is not yet 0600 hours, remain at the custodial desk with your notebook open. Do not wander. Do not explore. Do not improvise tasks. Idle time is part of the protocol. I memorized the new rules and began month 3. Shift 61 was quiet. Shift 62 brought the music, violin music from somewhere in the storage corridor at 0344. I couldn't find a source. I left the area and radioed. Vernon said it would stop, and it did at 0351. Shift 70 brought shadows that moved independently, stretching and contracting without regard to the overhead lights. I didn't look at them directly per Rule 36. Shift 83 brought the automatic doors activating 12 times in succession at 0417. I counted them, stood at my desk facing away after the 3rd, and waited until they stopped at 0425. The shifts blurred together. I stopped thinking of myself as Sarah Collins from Milwaukee. I became the custodian, the person who followed the rules, the operator of protocols. The building was no longer strange to me. It was familiar. It was orderly. It made sense in a way the outside world had stopped making sense. On shift 94, I realized I couldn't remember what my apartment looked like. On shift 112, I found myself writing a rule in my notebook before I caught myself. Rule 48. If you begin to forget your life outside the building, that is expected. Do not be alarmed. I immediately crossed it out. Rule 38. Prohibited personal observations. On shift 130, I saw Vernon walking the building at 0300. He shouldn't have been there. My shift, my time. I followed Rule 21 anyway. What's today's date? March 9th. Correct, it was March 9th. You're doing well, he said. 20 more shifts and you're done with month 3. Very few people make it this far. I follow the rules. Yes, you do. Better than anyone I've seen. He looked at me carefully. Are you sleeping well during your off hours? I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd been at the motel. I couldn't remember driving there. I must have been going there, sleeping, returning. But I had no memory of it. I sleep fine. Vernon nodded. After shift 150, you'll have a choice. Take a week off to reset, or continue immediately into month 4 with a substantial pay increase. Most people who make it to 150 can't take the week off. They need the building by then, they need the rules. I'll decide when I get there. You already know what you'll decide. He walked away down the corridor and I didn't see him again that shift. 20 more shifts. I completed them methodically, perfectly. Every rule followed exactly. Every amendment incorporated immediately. My notebook was pristine. Clean handwriting, accurate logs, no crossed-out entries except the one violation on shift 112. On shift 150, the last shift of month 3, I completed my tasks with perfect efficiency. At 0430, I did the inventory. At 0500, the parking lot lights brightened. At 0547, I did a final patrol. At 0600, Vernon arrived. He reviewed my notebook for the 90 shifts of month 3. No violations, no incidents requiring emergency protocols. Perfect compliance. Your retry A continue done with month 3. You've completed 150 shifts. He closed the notebook and looked at me. You have 24 hours to decide about month 4. Take the week off or continue. The contract for month 4 is in your locker. I opened my locker. The contract was there, printed on the same paper as the others. Month 4, 120 shifts, 4 months of continuous work, pay increased to 5 times the original rate. No early termination clause, no break between months. Begin immediately or take mandatory week off. I read it standing in the locker room. Vernon waited in the corridor outside. The contract included a new section I hadn't seen before. Permanent assignment eligibility. After completing month 4, I would be eligible for permanent employment as a senior custodian with housing provided on-site and comprehensive benefits. Permanent employees worked variable shifts, trained new hires, and maintained the building's operational protocols in coordination with management. Permanent employees didn't leave. I held the contract and tried to remember what I'd wanted when I first arrived. $8,000. Student loans. A job. That would get me through March. That was 4 months ago. I'd earned $32,000. My loans were paid. I had savings now. I could leave. Take the week off, never come back, find a normal job in a normal building where the doors stayed where they were supposed to be and the rules made conventional sense. But when I tried to picture leaving, driving south on the highway, returning to Milwaukee, applying for ordinary jobs, I felt nothing. No anticipation, no relief. Just emptiness. The building made sense. The rules made sense. I was good at this. I was perfect at this. Vernon's voice came from the corridor. You don't have to decide now. Take the 24 hours. Go to the motel. Sleep, eat. Think about it. I changed out of my uniform and walked to my car. Dawn was breaking, the sky gray and heavy with weather. I drove south toward the motel. But when I reached mile marker 275, I kept driving. I didn't turn into the motel parking lot. I kept going south toward Milwaukee, toward what I still thought of as home. The highway was empty. The landscape was frozen, colorless. I drove for 20 minutes before I realized I couldn't remember the exit number for Milwaukee. I couldn't remember my address. I knew I had an apartment. I knew it was in Milwaukee, but the details were gone. I pulled over at a rest stop, a different rest stop, normal, no rules, just bathrooms and vending machines and travelers. I sat in my car with the engine running and tried to remember. My apartment, 3rd floor, or was it 2nd floor? Corner unit, or middle unit? There was a window, or were there 2 windows? What color were the walls? Nothing. I pulled out my phone. I'd barely used it in 4 months. The battery was at 12%. I opened my contacts. My parents' number was there. My college roommate. A few friends. I called my roommate. It rang 4 times, then voicemail. Her voice sounded strange to me, unfamiliar. I hung up without leaving a message. I tried to call my parents. The call didn't connect. I checked my phone. No signal. I was in a dead zone, or the phone was malfunctioning, or something else was wrong. I sat in the car for an hour, trying to remember who I was before the rest stop. Sarah Collins, 26 years old, bachelor's degree in English, student loans, no career prospects. That was the data. But I couldn't remember what it had felt like to be that person. I couldn't remember what I'd cared about or wanted or feared. The rest stop had rules. The rules made sense. Follow them and be protected. Violate them and suffer consequences. Clear, measurable, consistent. The rest of the world didn't work that way. The rest of the world was chaos pretending to be order. At 14:00, 8 hours after my shift ended, I turned the car around and drove north. I reached the rest stop at 15:30. I parked in my usual space near the service entrance. I walked to the door and pressed the buzzer. Vernon's voice came through the intercom. Collins? I'm signing the month 4 contract. You still have 12 hours to think about it. I don't need them. I'm ready to continue. Silence for 5 seconds. Then the door unlocked. I walked through the corridors to the locker room. The contract was still on the bench where I'd left it. I signed it, dated it, and walked to Vernon's office. He was sitting at his desk, reviewing paperwork. I handed him the contract. You tried to leave. How do you know? Everyone tries to leave after month 3. The building lets them try. It's important that you choose to come back. He filed the contract in a drawer. You could have stayed away. You would have forgotten more and more, but eventually you'd have built a new life, a normal life. Most people don't come back. But some do. Some do. They become lifers. They work here for years, maybe decades. They understand that the rules are real protection, not just procedures. They understand that what's contained here needs to be contained, and someone has to do the work. He looked up at me. Is that what you are? A lifer? I thought about the question. A lifer, someone who stayed, someone who became part of the structure itself. Yes, Vernon nodded. Then welcome to month 4. Your shift starts at 2200 hours. There will be more amendments. The rules will continue to evolve. You'll start training new hires in month 5 if you complete month 4 successfully. You'll learn management protocols. You'll understand the architecture of containment. What exactly are we containing? Vernon stood and walked to a filing cabinet. He pulled out a folder labeled Historical Context, Senior Staff Only. He handed it to me. Read this before your next shift. It will answer some questions, not all questions. Some things can't be explained, only managed. I took the folder back to the locker room and read. The document inside was 30 pages long, typed on old paper, some pages yellowed with age. The header read, Operational History, Rest Stop Facility, 287 Interstate 41 North. The building had been constructed in 1974 on land that had been vacant for decades. Before the highway, it had been railroad land. Before the railroad, it had been wilderness. Before wilderness, according to fragmentary historical records, it had been considered cursed by indigenous populations who avoided it. The document described localized spatial anomalies and temporal inconsistencies documented since the 1800s. Travelers reported getting lost on clear trails, finding structures that disappeared, hearing voices in languages no one recognized. Surveying crews in the 1960s noted compass malfunctions and distance measurement discrepancies. When the highway was built, the anomalies intensified. The first rest stop built on the site burned down under unexplained circumstances. The second collapsed structurally despite sound engineering. The third became the current facility, but only after consultants were brought in. The consultants unnamed in the document developed a system of operational constraints that could contain and channel the anomalies. These constraints became the rules. The building was designed specifically to implement the rules: the number of doors, the layout of corridors, the placement of windows, the timing of lights. Everything was intentional. Staff turnover was extreme in the first years. People quit, disappeared, or became casualties of rule violations. Eventually, the training protocols were refined. The amendments process was established. The system stabilized. The document's final paragraph was handwritten, added later. The rules work because they define the boundary between human operational space and anomalous space. Compliance maintains the boundary. Violation collapses it. The boundary must be maintained indefinitely. There is no permanent solution, only continuous management. Staff who understand this become essential infrastructure. I closed the folder. I was essential infrastructure now. At 22, I began shift 151. Month 4 was the hardest. The amendments came faster. 53 rules, then 61, then 74. I memorized them all. I executed them perfectly. On shift 183, I trained my first new hire. A man named Marcus, 29 years old, desperate for money. I gave him the orientation Vernon had given me. I showed him the rules. I watched him read them with the same skeptical determination I'd had 6 months ago. "What happens if I break a rule?" he asked. "Don't break them," I said. He lasted 11 shifts before he opened an unmarked door on shift 12. I found his notebook in the supply closet 3 days later. His name was on the first page. The rest was blank. I trained another hire. She lasted 43 shifts before she looked directly at her reflection's eyes at 02:17. She finished that shift but never came back for the next one. Vernon said she was alive but changed, living somewhere downstate, not speaking much. I trained a third hire. He made it through month 1 and was starting month 2 when he decided to investigate the vending machine sounds. He went into the corridor at 0034 and didn't come out. We sealed that corridor for a week. When we unsealed it, he wasn't there, but his footsteps could be heard at night, walking back and forth, back and forth. I completed month 4, 120 shifts, 270 total. Vernon offered me the permanent position: senior custodian, on-site housing, comprehensive benefits, training responsibilities, management track. No end date, just continuous work, continuous compliance, continuous containment. I signed immediately. They moved me into the trailer behind the building. Small, clean, functional. Everything I needed. I stopped going to the motel. I stopped going anywhere. The rest stop became my entire world: the building, the parking lot, the trailer, the rules, the shifts, the protocols. I trained dozens of new hires over the next months. Most quit. Some violated rules and paid various prices. A few made it to month 2 or 3. One made it to month 4 and accepted a permanent position as day custodian. The rules continued to evolve. 83 rules, 97 rules, 115 rules. I knew them all perfectly. I could recite any rule from memory. I could execute any protocol without consulting my notebook. On my 500th shift, Vernon retired. They promoted me to operations manager. I took over his office, his duties, his schedule. I still worked overnight shifts 3 days per week, but now I also managed the day staff, coordinated with the assistant manager, filed reports with the regional office, and updated the rules when necessary. The regional office was a voice on the phone, a mailing address for reports, a direct deposit for paychecks. I never met anyone from the regional office. I never asked questions about the larger infrastructure. My job was this building, This specific containment, these specific rules. On my 1000th shift, nearly 3 years after I'd first arrived, a new hire asked me the question I'd asked Vernon. What exactly are we containing? I gave her the answer Vernon had given me. Something that was here before the rest stop was built. Something that's always been here. The building contains it, channels it, keeps it manageable. The rules define the relationship. Follow them and you're protected. But what is it? I looked at her. I remembered being curious. I remembered wanting to understand. That curiosity had faded years ago, replaced by something more useful, acceptance. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that the rules work. Follow them exactly and you'll be fine. She nodded, uncertain but committed. She needed money. She thought it would be temporary. I knew better. I'd thought the same thing. She lasted 62 shifts before she found an unmarked door and couldn't resist opening it. I filed the incident report and posted the job opening. The work continued. The building contained. The rules evolved. I trained, managed, maintained. On my 1500th shift, I realized I couldn't remember my parents' faces. I couldn't remember my college roommate's name. I couldn't remember the apartment in Milwaukee or why I'd needed $8,000 or what I'd planned to do after I earned it. I only remembered the rules. I was sitting at the custodial desk during a quiet shift when I understood. I had become what Vernon had been when I met him. Changed, isolated, protected by the rules but also bound by them. Unable to leave, unable to imagine leaving, unable to want to leave. The building was my life now. The rules were all I had. And that was fine. That was good even. The rules worked. The rules made sense. The rules protected me and protected the boundary and protected everyone who traveled past this place without knowing what was contained. Here, what would spill out if the protocols failed. At 04:30, I completed the inventory. At 05, the parking lot lights brightened. At 06, my shift ended and I walked to my trailer and I slept. That night I would return. I would synchronize my watch. I would check the doors. I would follow the rules exactly. I always followed the rules exactly. Tomorrow night, another new hire would start. I would give them the orientation. I would show them the notebook. I would watch them read the rules with skepticism and determination and need. I would tell them what Vernon had told me. Follow the rules exactly, every shift, no exceptions. And I would not tell them what I'd learned, what Vernon had known but couldn't say. That the rules would protect them from what was contained in the building, but nothing would protect them from what they would become by following the rules for too long. I would not tell them because they needed to choose for themselves the way I had chosen. The way everyone chooses in the end. The building always needs operators. The rules always need followers. The boundary always needs maintenance. Someone has to do the work. Someone always does.